Welcome back to Zestology, the podcast all about energy and vitality, coming to you from central London. Tony Wrighton here, and I hope the start of 2019 has treated you well. Today, he's a former professional sports player at a very high level, and he was a world champion bodybuilder as well. Brian Keane is now a top coach, fitness trainer, and extreme endurance expert. And in this podcast, well, it's a bit of a kind of 2019 focused one. Some ideas to help you get this new year underway and get back to kind of energetic ways. In this podcast, we talk about the best supplements, gadgets, productivity hacks, lifestyle hacks, diets, and loads more. And it includes a long chat about whether we ourselves are productive or silly fools. So, I like to think that I'm quite productive, but sometimes I'm just a productive, silly fool. And we have an interesting chat about that. And hopefully I've kind of just refocused towards the productive end of being a silly fool, if that makes sense. So yeah, Brian is awesome. I've been on his podcast before. He's now coming on mine. He's such a great guy, bursting with energy. Something's definitely working. And since the theme of this podcast is very much energy, because I went through quite a long time when I didn't have much, and so I wanted to do a podcast on it, and Brian, therefore, is an excellent person to have on this podcast. Here he is, Brian Keane on Zestology.
One of the things that I've been experimenting with over the last year that we kind of got into on my podcast a little bit, and I know your listeners are big on the biohacking side and making sure that, you know, they're optimizing performance and function, is I've been playing around with intermittent fasting and the keto diet, which I know your audience will be familiar with, but I've came from a kind of a different background with it, because I originally fitness is the kind of the lens that I see the world from, but I also run a business. I've got obviously my own LLC corporation and people that work with me. So being kind of mentally tuned in is something that I've been really focused on over the last 18 months. And what I've played around with is the effect that of my concentration on my focus on intermittent fasting and mixing that in with the keto diet. So we spoke on my podcast. I ran Marathon des Sables in April. For anyone unfamiliar with that, it's 6 back-to-back marathons in the Sahara Desert, self-sufficient. So you carry your own food effectively. So
it just doesn't sound that much fun.
It's not. I can't really recommend anybody do it, but you definitely come out mentally stronger out the other side. Yeah. And it's funny because I actually found 2 hacks by accident in preparation for that.
Right.
And one was obviously getting my body more fat adapted, and working with time restricted eating because I knew I wouldn't have as much food. But another one was the sauna. Because I was doing so much work in the sauna trying to prepare my body for the heat in the Sahara, I started getting all these amazingly positive benefits.
Right.
So, for example, I would do, 20, 30 minutes in the sauna, and then I would do maybe up to 40, 45 minutes. And then I scaled it back into like really intense, hot 10 to 15 minutes, which is what I do now. And I was like, oh my God, I would come out and my brain would be so clear. My mood was massively elevated. And then I started to do the research on, the effect on brain neurotropic factor, the heat stress, the heat shock proteins that are coming from that. So the combination of those 2 things is something that between intermittent fasting and being more fat adapted with keto and the heat stress with the sauna, they're 2 amazing hacks I'd recommend anybody for mood, mental clarity, and just feeling so much better throughout the day. So they're just kind of 2 that I would definitely recommend experimenting with.
So now, when you were, because I think I might have talked to you on your podcast about this. I did the 3 Peaks Challenge last year, which is nothing like as hardcore as the Marathon des Sables. But I intermittent fast as well, and generally keto. And I had all these kind of low carb snacks in my bag, and I felt pretty pleased with myself. Got to the top of the first mountain, Snowdon. We'd only been walking for about 2 hours, and I was so knackered. I basically had to have a full fat Fanta and just a load of jelly babies babies just to get my sugar levels up. And I personally think when the exercise is that intense, the intermittent fasting and the keto doesn't work for me. So what's it like doing 7 marathons in 7 days in the desert?
So because of I'm very, very schooled up on the sports nutrition side. That's kind of my background that I came in from. So I kind of geek out on the sports nutrition side. So it's like, it's embarrassing to admit, but I was like, when I signed up for Marathon des Sables, I'm like, yes, I'm going to get to experiment with fat adaptation and all these things.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where my interest lies. But when I was out there, it was very funny because when you mentioned on my podcast about the can of Fanta, I laughed so much because, and I didn't tell you this when we were on, but when I was in the desert, because I'm quite a big guy, so I kind of come from a strength and conditioning bodybuilding background. I used to be a competitive bodybuilder. So I'm quite a big guy, and I'm still walking around at, 5'8", 85, 86 kilos, about, 190, 200 pounds for anyone in the US. So I'm quite big and quite dense even now, even though I do marathons and ultra marathons. But I had a 13 kilo pack starting Marathon des Sables. So to give you a bit of context, in my tent, there's 6 people to a tent in the Sahara. And I was 85 kilos, about 190, 195 pounds. And there was one other guy in my tent who was the same weight as me. I was 5'8" and he was 6'7". So that gives you kind of a gauge of the ultra marathon kind of build. So when I started experimenting with fat adaptation coming into, say, Marathon des Sables, when I got out there, I had a little bit of carbohydrates, but they were complex carbs. All my bag was 13 kilos of food. It was oats. I had some dried fruit in there. I had a lot of almonds. You're
carrying all your own stuff as well.
You're carrying everything, your sleeping bag, your any clothing you have, any kit, any safety kit, your food, everything is on your bag or on your back from the first day until the last day. So it's completely self-sufficient. So that's where the difficulty comes. They give you water at checkpoints, but it's rationed. So on my first day, and I'll never make this mistake for as long as I live when I'm running through the desert, if I ever do it again, is I spilt my water on the first day. I spilt over a bottle. And my God, to that next checkpoint, Tony, I thought like my mouth was so dry. I was like, I'm never going to get to the next checkpoint. I'm going to die here on day one.
It's pretty dangerous, right?
Yeah, it is. But you have enough. Just don't spill it. I was just, a bit silly and didn't concentrate enough, and I spilt it. But when I was out there, I was running alongside 2 other guys, and we were helping to pace each other. And about the second day in, I had been eating super clean. Like I was eating all the food that I had ate in preparation for it. And on the second day, we were about 30 kilometers in. We were out in the sun for about 6 hours at this stage because it was a belter of a day. It gets upwards of 40, 50 degrees in the Sahara, and it's just dead heat. And he brought out a pack of Chewits and split it between the 3 of us. And I never tasted anything so good in my life. Right. I was like, never underestimate the power of full fat Fanta or Chewits when you're doing something like that again. So for example, I'm running through the Arctic Circle in February, and I'm bringing Chewits with me. So that's the equivalent. I can't bring Fanta, but I'll be bringing Chewits with me.
So that covers kind of a couple of good lifestyle hacks. What about supplements? What if I had to ask you 2 supplements that are pretty kind of amazing for what you do, either on a day-to-day basis or when you're doing a load of fitness stuff or whatever? Is there anything that stands out? And I'll have a think while you're talking as well, if there's anything that makes a big difference to me. What are the 2 supplements that you love and you think other people might like that they haven't already tried? Because, lifestyle stuff is great, but if someone just promises me a pill, I'm all over it. Never works quite as well as I think it's going to, but it's quite exciting to hear about it.
There's 2, so I'm really curious to hear what you're going to say. And one is a little bit more abstract, and one is kind of a very day-to-day, and I'll explain on both just so people can experiment. The kind of the day-to-day one that I love and recommend to a lot of people that I work with or people that ask a similar question is an extra strength probiotic for gut health. Like if your gut isn't functioning at optimal level, it doesn't matter what other supplements you're using or even the food that you're eating, you're not going to be absorbing the nutrients from those foods to get everything that your body needs. And, you know, if you're trying to function at a high level cognitively, it's really important that you're not getting that brain fog that can come from too much inflammation in your gut. And an extra strength probiotic can help that. That in combination with one that's a little bit more abstract, which is a natural nootropic that I love, and that's Bacopa monnieri, which is a natural nootropic for mental cognition. So I think we spoke about this briefly. When you were on my podcast as well. I can't remember because I spoke about it very recently with somebody because I don't use it every day.
Me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. And I don't use it every day. But it's one that I add to my green smoothie in the morning religiously if I've got, you know, if I'm writing or if I'm on a podcast or I need to, you know, if I've got a full day consultation, if I've got something that my brain needs to be switched on, I add, you know, a quarter of a teaspoon to my green smoothie. And it kind of works like the way I kind of feel similar to when I take caffeine, even though it's not a stimulant. The kind of feeling you get when you drink a cup of coffee where your brain starts to switch on, I kind of get a similar effect with Bacopa monnieri. What about you, Tony? What would you, if you had to pick two, what would you say?
Yes, well, can I have three? And I don't know why I'm asking you because it's my podcast. I can decide.
You can have three.
But, you know, it's so true because gut health, as regular listeners will know, is something that has been regularly on my agenda because that's kind of been the big thing for me over the last 20 years that I've kind of struggled to get right. And I am just so low energy when my gut is not in a good place. And it's kind of getting better and better, but it's still not perfect. But a couple of things that I'm working with at the moment that I think are quite exciting are, have you heard of this thing called Restore? Kind of comes in a bottle and it's essentially, it's like kind of earth and soil in water.
No, I must check it out.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. And I had the guy who's kind of invented it on my podcast. It's called Dr. Zach Bush. And I think if you look on Amazon for it, you'd look for Restore for Gut or Restore for Health with the number 4 in there.
I know, I recognize that name. Yeah. He doesn't have a book, or does he have a book?
Yeah, probably. He's a kind of triple certified doctor. He's done loads of research. He spent 10 years in academia. What's interesting about it is it's not a probiotic, but it kind of undoes a lot of the damage that modern fertilizers do to our food and therefore our guts as well. So actually what this Restore Gut is doing is it starts to tighten the holes in the kind of cell junctions in the stomach so that if you have literally got a leaky gut, less food slips through. Now, I've been working with it for I started taking it at the start of last year and felt great. And I track what all the supplements I take and how it kind of helps me feel. And then I forgot to take it for a while and my gut got worse. So I am working on the basis at the moment that this Restore actually does do something quite interesting to my gut. When you look down the reviews, there are hundreds and hundreds of reviews who say the same thing, though there are also plenty of people who say, nah, it's not for me. But an impressive amount of reviews who say, yeah, that's quite an interesting thing. So Restore, all I'd say is start very, very small. Because I think I started I was like, yeah, great, I'll be drinking that every morning. And you need, I'm still only on about half a teaspoonful a day. So,
I love it. I literally wrote that down. Like as soon as you mentioned the name, I'm like, and the gut permeability of the leaky gut is something that I've had issues with. I wrote that down straight away.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and then on that theme, I've been looking at a probiotic, like you mentioned, but one which doesn't have any histamine-inducing probiotics in it. So, this is properly geeking out. This is so nerdy, but yeah, I think I tend to have quite an allergic reaction to things. And histamine is what you produce kind of when you get stung by a bee or when you get hay fever, or there can be too much histamine in your gut as well. And that's not very good in terms of your gut working optimally. And sometimes when you take probiotics, there's loads of histamine in there. So you can buy various probiotics that have had the histamine taken out. And I've been taking one called Probiota Histaminx.
Where do you get that?
I got it online, but Seeking Health is the brand that I like. Seeking Health, and they sell it. And then the third one is L-ornithine, which I take at night. It definitely helps me sleep, and I've been taking that for about a year. That's a good one.
Oh, I got to check out that. I take GABA before I go to bed, and magnesium as well, just to wind down my central nervous system. Yeah. But L-ornithine, actually, just as you said it, I meant to experiment with that about 12 or 18 months ago, and I forgot. I'm definitely going to add that back onto my list now that you've said it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that don't work, and there's also a lot of things. I do kind of buy into the theory that supplements should be there to kind of supplement your nutrition rather than kind of be there forever. But those three things are kind of working for me at the moment, and L-ornithine, I've just carried on taking it. I think it's suiting me a lot. So it might be a supplement that's in there for quite a long time.
Well, I think that's great advice as well. The thing is with supplements, and again, it's kind of my bread and butter from my background, that they're not going to work for everyone. It's not that the supplements don't work. It's just that everybody's genetic makeup is so different, and everyone's nutrients, the ability to absorb certain nutrients, and obviously gut health and all of that is going to affect what nutrients you're deficient in. And the best supplements generally, again, there's going to be standard ones across the board, like ones that help you sleep, like L-ornithine, and the ones that are going to help your gut. But the best supplements generally for any of your listeners is the ones that you're missing. You know, like people will ask me, someone from a sports background, what's the best supplement for building muscle? And, you know, generally you'll see creatine. But if you eat red meat 7 days a week, you're probably not going to benefit from supplementing with creatine. And I think that goes across the board for fitness, that goes across the board for sleep, that goes across the board for health. So do a little bit of it, geek out like me and Tony. Yeah. Do a little bit of a look into it and be like, oh, that could work for me.
And are you bodybuilding now, or is it kind of more general training for endurance and that kind of thing?
I do a little bit of maintenance work, and the truth is because I love that style of training. So I played sport all my life and then went into bodybuilding. So
what sport were you playing?
I played GAA.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, I know from my days in Ireland that, and you were probably like a big name. The GAA players are just so famous in Ireland, aren't they?
Yeah, it's our national sport. Like it's the equivalent to our NFL or our NBA or our Premier League. From soccer from the UK. Like hurling and football are our two biggest sports by a mile, and then rugby and soccer kind of come in after them. But I played that and did a lot of weightlifting from that because obviously building up to get because it's quite a physical sport.
Yeah.
So I was building up. So that's my bread and butter. So I still do a little bit of maintenance work. So for example, this morning I did, 30 minutes, a little bit of 9 to 12 sets on body parts, so on chest and back, and then I did a 17-kilometer run. So because of I have a ultra marathon on Saturday, I'm running a 76-kilometer run in Barcelona on Saturday to help me kind of prep for the Arctic. Yeah. So I still do quite a bit of weightlifting out of love because I hate to run, Tony. I can't remember, did we get into this on mine? I actually hate running. I don't enjoy it at all.
Right.
So why do I hate it?
No. I just said right. That's it's interesting that you're picking all these challenges that involve. So, and how old are you, Brian?
31 next month.
Okay, and how come you're a former GAA player rather than still current?
So when I went into bodybuilding, I left GAA because of I don't want to say it's impossible to do both, but it's very difficult because at my biggest I was 10 kilos, 20 pounds heavier than I am now.
Right.
And I was competing around the world. Like I competed in the WBFF, which is like the muscle model, fitness model world. I came 8th in the world in Las Vegas in 2015.
Wow.
And I was doing well in that world. And it was a case of I couldn't, it was trying to catch two rabbits and I'd catch neither. So I left GAA at 26, went into bodybuilding. And then over the last, since my daughter was born, my daughter's 3. I left bodybuilding just because that life wasn't really conducive to where I wanted to go anymore, and started to move just recently into the endurance space. So now that's kind of what I do. To be honest, Tony, I'm a lover of fitness and I love training. And it's just, I get bored. I get ADHD when I'm doing something for too long. I'm like, okay, let's go try that over there now and see how our body responds. So that's why I left GA and why I left bodybuilding as well. And now I'm doing a lot more of the ultra endurance stuff. I've Ironman in June. So when I get back from the Arctic, I've got Ironman, which is the next one.
So you got Barcelona, Arctic, Ironman. I mean, it's quite interesting. I'm a little bit like that with work and business as well, and it doesn't always serve me. I'm very good at ideas, but I'm sometimes not quite so good at seeing those ideas through. So I'm like, it's good to find someone who you can work with who kind of helps you see those through. That's my theory on the matter.
How do you do in terms of personality trait, out of curiosity, how do you deal with that? Do you bring in coaches? Is it your network of people around you? Or how do you keep yourself accountable when you're jumping from, say, venture to venture or trying to stay on track? What strategies do you use, Tony?
I have worked with coaches before, and I've started working with, certainly business partners and hiring people who can help. I will get obsessed, and it's not just in work, it's just in every area of my life. I'll get obsessed with something. And 3 months later or 6 months later, I'll be obsessed with something else. And it might be, I'm obsessed with playing chess for 3 months or reading a certain type of book or something like that. So, I'm pretty good at keeping myself accountable, I think. But I certainly becoming increasingly aware of the fact that I'm a bit more of a big picture than a deep kind of thinker and a kind of, I'll have the ideas and then I'll get someone else to actually do them, which would be perfect.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah, and I'll keep all the money for them as well.
I'm totally taking that. I'm like, that's way smarter than what I'm doing.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because the temptation can be to start a new project which you're convinced is going to work. And actually, the one that you started 6 months ago is doing quite well. And what really is needed is a bit more love for that one. And I know from your website that you've got a lot of different stuff going on. You've got more than one podcast because you do stuff based around GAA as well. So you're definitely someone with bags full of ideas too.
That's why I totally connect with what you're saying, because I'm very, very similar in my approach with getting obsessed, and which helps, I think, if you have that personality trait of where you get obsessed with something, because the start of something is the hardest, getting something off the ground. It's just I haven't followed through with bringing other people in to be like, right, you take this now, which is something I must look into when we get off this podcast.
And I read on your website fairly recently, you talked about batching tasks and batching emails and how that kind of made you more productive. And I think you were talking about how you only check email at a certain time of day. Are you still doing that?
Yeah, do it religiously. It's actually down to 4 times a week now. I check emails 4 times a week on... I have an hour window in the mornings, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and generally that's it. And sometimes Friday if I have something at the weekend, it's in those allotted hours. Like I always joke, if someone sends me an email at, when 1 minute past my window, it doesn't get answered till the next day.
Yeah, wow. That must free up. Sometimes I feel like I spend the whole day on email. It takes the whole day to get through it. So that must free up a lot of time.
It was, but do you know what, Tony? I didn't realize until I actually started batching it initially how much time I was spending on email. So the first thing I did was I took it off my phone because I was in this really bad habit of like boredom scrolling, where you'd open your phone and I'd be in Facebook or Instagram or something, and then I'd be in my emails and then I'd be replying to an email, and it was all kind of very mindless. And then I could do that. I could do that 40 times a day, and it felt like I was just, like you said, I was being in emails the whole time. So I got really strict with it. And again, I'm big on systems over willpower. Like I took it off my phone. I literally deleted all the auto types on Gmail on my computer. So I actually had to type in the whole site. I rerouted it to a separate one so that when I clicked it, I actually had to click out of one email and go into another. So I set up systems that kind of kept me accountable, and then after about a month it was just automatic and it became a new habit. So that's what I did, and it worked really, really well. I could never go back now.
That is brilliant. I bet you have loads more time.
Oh, like it's unbelievable. Like I do the same thing now with social media. When I'm replying to DMs and messages, like I've got allocated time and I literally go through them all in one go over an hour or whatever it is, and then that's it. And then the phone gets left down. I do 1 day a week that's a digital detox where I don't even touch my phone. I don't even have it. And it's not even that it frees up the time, but you have this perception that you have so much more time because you're not getting stuck on these meaningless tasks that, can eat up the whole day if you let them.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because there can be an obsession with productivity in doing more, but actually, and I don't know that that's necessarily good for us. We don't need to do more. We need to do less. And by doing that, you are freeing up more time to read a book or go to the gym or do whatever. Just do the fun stuff.
It's funny because one of the biggest misconceptions I had for so long was confusing being busy with being productive, because they weren't the same thing. Because being busy means you have a lot of things to do, and being productive means you're getting a lot of things done. Yeah. And when I was able to separate those two things, I ended up getting way more done and having a lot more time, because I was the absolute embodiment of a busy fool. Like I had a to-do list as long as my arm. And then I read Gary Kelleher's The One Thing, and I read Essentialism, McKeown, I think Greg McKeown, and those two books together, I was like, oh, I am being a busy fool. I'm doing too much here that I shouldn't be doing. I could either outsource or I could have somebody else doing, or else they're not high priority tasks. And when I broke my day down into the things that I really have to do and get done and get them done early, it frees up the whole rest of the day, or else I outsource it. I've got a team of people that do things that I don't want to do, and that helps massively.
Right. Okay. So I've been taking notes. Did you say Essentialism?
Yeah, Greg McKeown, I think, is the author of that. Really good read. It's actually one of my favorite books on productivity. Okay. Yeah. And then we talked about hacks. I mean, one of my favorite areas of kind of talking on this podcast about how to optimize your well-being and looking at the new rules of health are the gadgets that in some way might make a difference to your life on a hour by hour, day by day, week by week basis. It might be an app or a gadget or a new bit of technology. Is there anything you use on that score or not? Kind of. It's funny because after we got off my podcast, you were talking about the Sam Harris waking up. Yes. I literally did my first meditation that day on it. So I'm on day 7 now, I think. 7 or 8. I missed a couple of days on it because I had it on my phone. I downloaded it, and you were talking about how good day 18 was or whatever it was, and I was like, okay, I'm starting this today. It's on my phone. Great. I already read his book. I'm on it. Yeah, and just on that, by the way, I realised after I told you about that, for anyone who's listening, we were talking about meditation, and I was saying I've used a new app to freshen things up a bit. It's Sam Harris's meditation app. It's called Waking Up. And I said that I'd just done day 18, and it was the most incredible meditation. And I realised that I got the day wrong by 1. So it's either day 17 or day 19 is an incredible meditation. But one of those around there, wow, had a massive impact. And there are a few days that I have felt super kind of chill, but also in the moment after having done that. So I'm glad you're enjoying that. Yeah, no, I am. That's one that meditation is something that I've really been actively trying to get better at. Now I'm lucky in the sense that I get it when I train to a degree, that disconnect feeling. I think meditation, anything that switches your brain off, where you're just kind of, one with your thoughts, or else you're one with whatever it is, the universe, whatever connection. I get that sometimes with training. So I'm lucky in that side. In terms of devices, I don't know if this one counts, but I use a noise machine at nighttime to help me sleep. Oh, right. And that's the best thing. It was about €60 on Amazon. That's the best thing I bought in about 3 years. It goes everywhere with me. Anytime I travel, I bring it with me. It's kind of like, it's a white noise machine. So I lived in London for 4 years. I lived in San Francisco in California for a year. And the noise of, say, traffic and outside, I grew up in a country home in the farm. I'm a farm boy by heart. And I really, really struggled to sleep in the cities. And I used to use white noise on my phone. So just a YouTube clip of like airplane noise or a hair dryer or something, like just white noise, static. And what happened was I'd get into other countries and my Wi-Fi wouldn't work or my internet wouldn't work. So I just Googled, noise machine. And it was like a €60 white noise machine that I use every night that just helps me sleep. And you know yourself how your productivity improves and everything from a health and even fitness point of view improves after a good night's sleep. I don't think I could live without that now. I'm not sure if that counts, but that's definitely one of the best things that I've ever bought.
I think it counts very well. Yeah, that sounds great. I have a slightly lower tech version of that in that I put a fan on at night here, which does help a bit, but I think that sounds very effective.
I have the fan is the setting. I have it on the fan setting at the minute.
Oh, do you? Great. Yeah. Good. And then, look, it's something I've asked everyone is what is one book that you'd recommend and one tip for living with more energy? You've obviously mentioned a couple of books there already. You mentioned the Essentialism books, and I think you mentioned Gary Kelleher as well.
Yeah.
Are there any other books you'd recommend? What is one tip that you'd have for living with more energy?
That's the thing with books is, and I think, and I'm glad that I mentioned Gary Keller as the one thing already, because that's my go-to example when I'm about to give this scenario. The thing is with book recommendations, it can be very difficult because depending on where your life is at the minute, different books will resonate for different reasons.
Right.
And Gary Keller's book took me 3 attempts. The first 2 times I couldn't get through it because I'm like, I'm not getting anything from this. And the third time I read it, it was obviously I was in a place in my life where I was doing too much work. I was being a busy fool, and I read it and went, oh my God, okay, that's the message. I get it now. So when I give recommendations, it's always difficult because different things will land with different people at different times. But in terms of energy, I think to stay on the sleep side, just because this one helped me so much with understanding sleep. I think you may have mentioned this on my podcast as well, if I'm not mistaken, because we geeked out on books at one stage. But Sleep by Nick Littlehales, a short book. He's a sports sleep expert. So he worked with the football team Man United. He worked with the British cycling team. And he's got a lot of hacks in there about making sure your sleep is of higher quality as opposed to higher quantity. And he speaks about the 90-minute REM cycle hack, where it's not about how much sleep you get every night. It's about how much sleep you get over the entire week and making sure that you get enough REM cycles. So in terms of an energy hack, that one completely shifted paradigms for me because I'd never seen sleep from that point of view. I'd heard how to get better night's sleep for longer, sleep for shorter, whatever it was. But that made me understand from a scientific point of view how the 90-minute REM cycles can give me more energy, and it would stop me beating myself up if I got less sleep one night because I could make it up in another REM cycle.
You're so on it, aren't you? What's your vice? That's what I want to know. I'm going to find that out at some point, Brian. Where does it all go wrong and you throw it all out the window and get involved in sex, drugs and rock and roll?
Oh, man, I've got the most addictive personality ever, Tony. I can get into all of them. I to be honest, I went so far one way in my early 20s that I'd probably gone the other direction, the other side. Like I did everything in my early 20s. The sex, the drugs, the rock and roll, the whole lot. And insert everything else. So I think I went, like, my time living in London, I utilized that time. And I think because, and again, I wouldn't change it for anything, but because I went so extreme, and I was very functioning, I was very high functioning, but I was so extreme with the lifestyle I was living, and I wasn't getting anything done in terms of actual productivity and, fulfillment, but I was just numbing out with any external substance I could use. And it allowed me to have a better perspective. And then it only got stronger. Then when my daughter was born, it, took off to another level again. And the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years has just been kind of a compound effect of doing the right things continuously over time. But yeah, no, I've got all the vices. I just make sure they don't control me anymore.
Yeah, great. And what is one tip? I mean, we've covered loads. It might be something we've already spoken about. That's fine if it is. One tip for living with more energy, living a zesty 2019.
a combination between do some form of exercise and find some form of diet that gives you energy. And just to kind of flesh that out a small bit, fitness is my background. You don't need to do 2 hours a day in the gym. I've got some of my business consultants that I worked with, they're doing 8-minute workouts in the morning. They're doing 2 rounds of Tabata, which is 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off on, say, a squat, and then they rest and they do push-ups, or they do 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, and they do that. It's 8 rounds and it's 4 minutes each, and they do it twice. And that's their whole workout for the day. And that gives them a lot more energy, particularly people that can't prioritize the time to go to a gym, come back. You know yourself. Look at your schedule, Tony, how busy you are. It's about what's the most time effective thing that gives me the most energy, that reaches the end goal with minimal amount, minimum effective dose, and combine it with a nutritional strategy that you can stick to that gives you a lot of energy. Whole foods, clean foods, whether it's keto, whether it's clean eating, whether it's intermittent fasting, it doesn't matter what it is. Just find something that works for you, that gives you energy, and then double down on it. Again, certain things, avoid processed foods as much as you can. Nutritional wise, you stick with those principles, you're not going to go too far wrong.
Very good. Very good. So Brian, you've got it's been great talking to you on Zestology. You've got a big 2019, haven't you? You've got this, so you've got Barcelona, Arctic, and then what's the Ironman you're doing?
So I've got the Arctic Circle in the end of February, and then I've got Ironman in Ireland in June, which is the first ever Ironman in Ireland. So that worked out perfectly, because I was like, I've never done a triathlon, but I never ran a marathon before I started preparing for Marathon des Sables either. So I just kind of tend to jump on the deep end on those and kind of learn to swim.
So what does the Ironman involve? What does Ironman involve?
Ironman is a 4-kilometer swim, 180 or 85 kilometer cycle, and then a marathon to finish. So 42-kilometer run at the end, back to back.
Just make sure you've got plenty of cans of Fanta.
I'm literally going to get Fanta to sponsor that run.
Zestology brought to you by Fanta. And what is the Arctic Circle one you're doing again?
So Arctic Circle is 250 kilometers over 5 days. So that one's going to be hard. That one will be a lot harder, obviously, because you're talking about going up against the elements because of the temperature. So -3 to -30 is what we have to prepare for. And it's very much going against the elements. So running in snow and trying to basically not get frostbite or a hypothermia. Like, I kind of joke, but they're the two main concerns, that the things that could put you out, that could cause trouble. So I'm doing a lot of ice bath work at the minute, a lot of Wim Hof breathing, and trying to get my body a little bit better to the cold. But that one will be a very different kind of challenge. Ironman will be for time. You can build up the physical fitness for it. It's 3 movements and just get good in those movement patterns. Where the Arctic Circle, similar to Marathon des Sables, running through the Sahara, is try and get your body and mind right to deal with the elements. So I'm looking forward to that in a weird kind of way.
Thank you, Brian. Fantastic to have him on Zestology. You can follow Brian at Brian Keane Fitness on all social media and at briankeanefitness.com online. That is it for today's Zestology. Plenty more at tonywrighton.com. Another podcast next week. Of course, if you want to join the Zestology book club, then you can. It'd be great to have you there. Just head to Facebook and type in Zestology books and you'll find it. It's an almost secret book club. Not totally secret, but almost. Maybe see you there, and I'll see you next week on this podcast.